Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. We have 4 stories that will make you think twice about watching this in the dark. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Let's begin. This was the experience I had in my childhood home. Currently, I no longer live in the same state where this occurred, but it still is something I think about and share often. Sometimes I try not to think too much about this at night, but I'm excited to share this story with you all. As a kid, I always believed that my childhood house was haunted. My first experience happened when I was around 13 years old. My mom drove me home after school. I immediately went to the bathroom. As I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The doorknob moved slightly, and my heart skipped a beat. I peered under the crack of the door but saw no one there. As I continued to watch the door, I saw the knob begin to turn slowly, and I felt a wave of terror wash over me. The door creaked open, paused for a moment, and then slammed shut. I was frozen with fear, unable to move or comprehend what had just happened. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a series of chilling events that would haunt me for years to come. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching and following me wherever I went in that house. One day, while taking a nap on the couch, I woke up to see a tall, shadowy figure in the doorway. It was solid black and 3-dimensional, with a skinny, emaciated appearance. After a second, it came at me as if it was in stop motion. Think claymation, and it was gone. The shadow figure began to make constant appearances in the house. I would see it from the corner of my eyes, or in the darkness around my home. When I was practicing the piano, deep in concentration, suddenly I felt like I was being watched. My heart started pounding out of my chest as I turned to look towards the doorway, only to see a solid black head-shaped thing at the top of the doorway staring at me. I froze in terror, unable to move or look away. All I could see was the thing's head. This couldn't have been my parents, since the doorways are around 7 to 8 feet tall. The thing's head then twists back into the hallway out of sight. It only lasted a moment, but it was horrifying. It felt like I was living in a scary movie. I kept feeling things were going to get worse. I was trying to keep this to myself, but things got worse when my mom and dad left town, which they did often. My friend's dad dropped me off back home one day and looked towards the window confused. "I thought your dad wasn't home." He did a double check to explain he saw a tall shadow figure. He described in detail exactly what I saw. It was scary, but also validating to know I wasn't going crazy. The strange occurrences in my house had everyone on edge. My family started accusing me of inviting something sinister into our home because they too had started seeing unexplained things. The person most affected by this was my mom, who heard the basement door slam shut while she was alone in the house. I did everything I could to get rid of whatever was haunting us, but nothing seemed to work for long. It got to the point my mom had to jam the basement door with an object in the hinge, so it wouldn't move. It was a heavy wooden door. When I turned 18, I had my first boyfriend. We would always sleep in the spare bedroom in the basement. Both my parents left town that night. As usual, my boyfriend put on a podcast to help him sleep. But when I woke up in the middle of the night, I heard a strange voice speaking from across the room. I was terrified and immediately checked his phone. His phone and my phone were off too. I could still hear the voice of a woman speaking. I woke up my boyfriend in a panic. He was half asleep and told me to turn off the podcast. But when I explained that the phones were already off, we both froze in fear and stared at the door, wondering what was happening. It was winter, 2 a.m. No one was outside. The voice eventually went away, so we both decided to investigate. We opened the door and checked everywhere. There were no footprints in the snow outside. It didn't make sense. Luckily, I didn't have to stay in that house much longer. I went to college that summer. I didn't have anything happen after I moved away, at least not happening to me. When I came back home for winter break, my sister put my niece down for a nap in the spare bedroom. She woke up screaming and was inconsolable. The next day, she told my mom about the scary, skinny shadow figure in the doorway. It's been over 6 years now with nothing new happening. I frankly don't miss anything about whatever it was that was in my home. Upon reflection, I wonder if there was something there as a result of all the fighting that was happening. My parents were on the brink of divorce, and I was dealing with school, drama, and then whatever this thing was. I haven't stayed in the house long enough after leaving to explore that possibility. I truly believe it was a shadow person showing itself to me. I've been telling people for years that it was haunted, but I've been brushed off since nobody has died here. Very recently, other members of my family have begun to notice things as well. They have been asking family members if they have had any experience in the house. When I was younger, probably in elementary school, I would see people on the second level peeking over this ledge we had. They were not fully formed people, but rather these dark, shadowy figures. It would creep me out, but I was also young and could have been imagining things. When I was a bit older in high school, I thought I was going a bit insane, maybe going through some type of schizophrenia or something like that. I was in the bathroom, getting ready for bed, when I heard a voice. "What are you doing?" I opened the bathroom door quickly to tell my grandma not to tease me. She was asleep on the couch, not fake sleeping since there is no way she could move that fast. I ignored it and went to lay down. I slept on a couch at this point in my life. As I am trying to fall asleep, I hear another voice, a different voice then, before say, "Do you think she can hear us?" I was totally freaked out at this point, and I slept on the floor next to my grandma that night. Now I go to school and decide to tell my homies about it. Everyone is a little comedic with it, teasing me and all that. A few weeks later, my friend comes over to help me bake cookies. We put them in the oven, close the door, and look at each other. "What should we do now?" I ask. My friend pauses and we both freeze as we hear a little girl's voice say, "You can play with me." Side note, there are no little girls in my house. My friend, God bless her soul, called her dad so fast after that and left. Sorry, Caitlin. Fast forward a few years later, I moved out of the house, and I didn't hear anything about any unnormal things happening there. About a week ago, my grandma confided in me she was worried about hearing things. She said that sometimes she hears my mom asking her questions when my mom isn't home. I was concerned about dementia or something similar, and I also bought a carbon monoxide detector. I brought up the incident to my sister since I was going to push for my grandma to go to the doctor. My sister then informs me that she also heard voices. They call her name, and when she goes to talk back to the person calling out to her, nobody is there. She gets upset because my mom's room is next to hers, so when she hears her voice, she goes into the room and no one's there. The flickering lights are one thing. The shadow people could be a trick of my mind. But for multiple people to hear voices now, that's when it becomes real. At this point, I need to get rid of this thing, but it'll take me some time to understand everything. I believe in ghosts, but a mimic, I don't know how to feel about that. I'm sure I have more stories somewhere in my brain. We used a Ouija board once, several years ago. We said goodbye and everything. I severely doubt it actually did anything. Additionally, I don't practice witchcraft, but I do use tarot cards for fun sometimes. Maybe I should stop. Very short, I'm a custodian for a school district. I'm going on 3 years, and every school I have been to is haunted. My first job was at a high school. As a custodian, your duty is to first and foremost secure the site. I wanted to emphasize this, since it's an important part to the story. Every new custodian develops an OCD, so to speak, of always checking the doors, due to the fact that you can lose your job before your probation period is over. It was a long weekend. I was still new to the job. I was checking to make sure everything was closed on my assignment list. The only exception was this window on the second floor. As I was responsible for the top floor, I needed to make sure it was closed. It was getting close to the end of my shift, and I couldn't find the window that was open. It turned out to be a room at the end of this hallway. I would always check my doors. One of the doors was left open perfectly. So perfectly straight, people would just swing the door open and leave it halfway open. No one was on this floor the whole shift. I knew I didn't do it. especially since I knew I could get fired for it. I just let that incident go as me forgetting to close that door. My next assignment was at an elementary. I'm the only person in the school I've double-checked to make sure no one was there. I start working in the office with my earphones on. As I'm cleaning the restroom, I hear a thud at the other end of the office. I take off my earphones to listen when I hear the noise again. I walked over to investigate and find nothing on the floor or anything out of place. Like I said before, I was the only person on campus. Second story I had at this school. When I was emptying the trash bags, I would toss them into the rolling trash bin. I would just throw them in there without any organization. As long as the bag made it inside the bin, I didn't care if the bags were sideways or standing upright. No one strategically cares about trash bags being neat. I came out of one of the rooms to find all the trash bags were lined up parallel in a perfect line and stacked on top of each other in the rolling bin. I knew I was by myself. I got so freaked out. I ran out of the building. I called a coworker to come help me. Not too long after, I was studying on the same second floor this occurrence happened on. When I heard a doorknob rattle in the next room, I thought my supervisor was checking in on me. They do that randomly once a month. As I waited for a few minutes, no one ever came, so I decided to go check for myself, and I didn't find anyone. What's more unsettling is that I know for sure I was the only person at the school. The last experience, which is my most recent one. I was talking with a coworker before our shift started. As we were having a conversation, the doorknob starts to rattle violently. We both jump back and look at each other. As we approach the doorknob, it just stops. We open the door to the classroom to investigate, and once again, no one was in there. I can't make this up. I was on FaceTime with my, now former roommate once, while we were all home for the holidays. They said they heard something weird in their attic and decided to investigate despite me, who has always lived in a haunted house, advising them not to. They did it anyways, so after this my roommate would text, me complaining about seeing and hearing things. I told them to say go away. They didn't listen and named the entity. 2 days later, we were back in our apartment. My partner, who lived with us, began complaining about hearing my voice, or my roommate's voice, while he showered. I began to hear it too, but with my roommate's voice only. Late at night, I would hear my roommate's closet door open and slam shut. Also, I would hear their laughter until I texted them asking them to politely quiet down as I had a class the night day. They would send me a Snapchat of them at work, asking me in complete confusion what I was talking about. We didn't have neighbors since the rooms next to us had been vacant and the new tenants weren't moving in for another few weeks on either side. So, I got up, went into my roommate's room to investigate. Their closet door was wide open, but otherwise everything looked normal. COVID hit, and my roommate couldn't justify staying in the apartment when the lease came to an end, especially since the rest of the school was closed for the foreseeable future. They moved out while my partner and I started apartment hunting because we didn't want to go back to living with our parents. We found a place and quickly moved in, smaller than our last place. As soon as we moved in, I started having sleep paralysis. I heard my former roommate's voice as well as my partner's voice whenever I showered. My partner mentioned the same thing. We had the same encounters, but with each other's voices, we would hear the locked bathroom door open and shut, along with our names being called. We would always respond, then peek out the shower curtain to see if the door was still closed and locked. So many sleepless nights together there, and other reasons caused us to move out. Our lease was broken early, due to the apartment building declining to tell us they were allowing a rooftop bar to share a wall with our bedroom. They said, "We can give you a coupon to the bar." We declined and broke our lease. Since it was their fault, we were legally allowed to move out without penalty. My partner's parents allowed us to stay in their lake house while we searched for a new place, since it was close to where I worked and close enough to the school. Once again, we had the same problems of hearing voices when we were alone. I remember our bedroom door was closed. When I woke up to a loud bang and someone yelling at us to wake up, I thought it might have been my partner's mother since the voices sounded like a muffled version of hers. I woke up, my partner went to investigate, but no one was there. As my partner was closing the door, he saw a dark figure run from the living room into the bathroom. completely freaking us out. Our final move was a week later. We didn't have any more problems with that entity again. That was the most malicious feeling I've ever experienced. Like I said, I have tons of ghost stories, but none have ever copied voices of those I know and love before. I'm just glad it's all over now. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.